Imagine discovering that one of the most dangerous things affecting your health right now may not be hidden in cigarettes, alcohol, or junk food, but inside your own refrigerator. Something you do every single week. Something you do because you are trying to be practical, save money, and avoid wasting food. What if that everyday habit was quietly creating the conditions linked to one of the deadliest cancers in the human body, without you ever realizing it? Sounds extreme, doesn't it? But unfortunately, it may not be. There's a habit hundreds of millions of people repeat every week without giving it a second thought: reheating leftovers. And what actually happens inside four specific foods the second time heat touches them is something most people will go their entire lives without ever hearing explained properly. The thumbnail you clicked, "Don't reheat this, it causes pancreatic cancer," sounds alarming for a reason. Because in certain foods, reheating can trigger chemical reactions researchers have spent years studying for their connection to inflammation, cellular damage, and pancreatic cancer risk. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly which four foods experts say should never be repeatedly reheated, what they may chemically transform into once you press that microwave button, and why those changes are now being discussed in connection with one of the cancers with the lowest survival rates in modern medicine: pancreatic cancer. I am Dr. Adrian Vale, and I believe every person who cooks at home deserves to hear this information. Because I have sat across from too many patients who receive devastating diagnoses and ask me the exact same question: why did nobody warn me about this sooner? And honestly, after hearing that enough times, staying silent no longer felt right. Now, before we go any further, there is something important you need to understand about the pancreas. It is one of the quietest organs in the body when it comes to damage. It usually does not hurt while problems are developing. It does not send obvious warning signals. It does not announce that years of stress and inflammation may already be building beneath the surface. By the time symptoms like back pain, jaundice, digestive issues, or unexplained weight loss finally appear, pancreatic cancer has often been developing silently for years. And the 5-year survival rate remains frighteningly low, around 12%. 12%. This is not the kind of disease that gives most people multiple chances after diagnosis, which is exactly why prevention matters so much. And some of the habits connected to prevention may already be sitting inside your refrigerator right now, waiting to be reheated for tomorrow's lunch. Before I reveal the four foods, you first need to understand what is actually happening inside food at the chemical level when it gets reheated. Because without understanding the science behind it, this can sound exaggerated or fear-driven instead of what it really is: basic biochemistry. When food is cooked for the first time, natural chemical reactions begin immediately. Proteins react with heat and sugars. Nitrogen-containing compounds interact with amino acids. Fats begin oxidizing under high temperatures. In most situations, the compounds created during that first round of cooking are present in amounts the body can still process and eliminate reasonably well. But reheating changes the equation in a very different way. The second time heat is applied, several reactions begin happening at once. First, many of the protective antioxidant compounds that originally helped stabilize the food are already weakened or destroyed. The natural biological buffers that helped limit damage during the first cooking process are no longer there in the same amount. Second, the same chemical reactions that produced small amounts of potentially harmful compounds during the first cooking cycle begin accelerating again, but now without those protective defenses. And third, while the food has been cooling and sitting in storage, bacterial and enzymatic activity may already have started converting certain substances, especially nitrates found in vegetables and processed foods, into more reactive intermediate compounds. Once reheated, heat pushes those compounds even further down the chain into substances researchers have studied closely for cancer risk. The group of compounds scientists are especially concerned about are called nitroso compounds, including nitrosamines and heterocyclic amines. Both have been classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probable human carcinogens. Animal studies have shown strong evidence that repeated exposure to these compounds may affect multiple organs, including the pancreas. And this is where things become difficult to ignore. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have identified dietary nitroso compounds as one of the pathways associated with increased pancreatic cancer risk over long-term repeated exposure. This is not internet mythology or random social media fear. It is a topic that exists in published scientific literature, and it connects directly to the first food on this list: processed meat, more specifically reheated processed meat. This is the one most people assume they already understand, but usually do not. Hot dogs, sausages, bacon, ham, deli meats, canned meats, basically any meat that has been smoked, cured, preserved, or processed using nitrates and nitrites. These foods already contain measurable amounts of nitroso compounds simply because of how they are manufactured. During processing, preservatives like nitrites react with naturally occurring amines in meat proteins, creating nitrosamines before the product even reaches your kitchen. So when you reheat these foods, you are not heating a chemically clean food. You are applying additional heat to something that may already contain carcinogenic compounds, and high heat accelerates nitrosamine formation even further. The hotter the temperature and the longer the exposure, the stronger these reactions can become. Studies examining dietary nitroso compounds and pancreatic cancer risk have found that higher long-term intake was associated with elevated cancer risk. Researchers studying processed and red meats have also identified heterocyclic amines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and nitroso compounds formed during high-temperature cooking as important mutagenic compounds, meaning compounds capable of damaging DNA at the cellular level. And that is the part most people never hear. Processed meat is not just changing flavor when reheated. Under high heat, it may also be undergoing chemical reactions linked to long-term cellular damage, which is why many experts recommend that if you choose to eat processed meats, it is safer to prepare them fresh and avoid repeatedly reheating them at extremely high temperatures, especially in frying pans or microwaves. Research examining processed and red meat consumption has proposed several pathways connecting them to pancreatic cancer risk, especially through compounds like heterocyclic amines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and nitroso compounds created during high-temperature cooking. In simple terms, processed meats already come with built-in chemical precursors that can become more harmful under repeated heat exposure. That is the practical reality most people never hear explained clearly. Cooking processed meat once is already a significant chemical process. Reheating it again at high temperatures, especially in frying pans or microwaves, may intensify reactions that researchers have been studying for years in relation to cellular damage and cancer development. Now, to be clear, I am not telling you that eating processed meat once automatically causes cancer. That is not what the science says. But if you are going to eat these foods, it is far safer to prepare them fresh, eat them immediately, and avoid repeatedly reheating them at high temperatures whenever possible. Now let us move to food number 2, and this one shocks people far more than processed meat ever does. Spinach and other nitrate-rich leafy greens. This surprises people because spinach has always been considered a healthy food, and honestly, fresh spinach absolutely is. People add it to smoothies, soups, omelets, pasta, and salads because nutritional advice for decades has praised it for being rich in iron, folate, antioxidants, vitamins, and plant compounds that support overall health. And then something unexpected happens. People cook a large portion at dinner, refrigerate the leftovers overnight, reheat it the next day, and may unknowingly trigger the exact chemical pathway they were trying to avoid in the first place. Here is why. Spinach naturally contains nitrates. In fresh vegetables, these compounds are generally harmless and may even support healthy blood flow and cardiovascular function. But once spinach is cooked and then left sitting, even inside a refrigerator, bacterial activity and enzymatic reactions can slowly begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. And that conversion continues during storage. The longer the cooked spinach sits, the more nitrites may accumulate inside the food. Then comes the reheating step, and this is where the chemistry changes again. Heat can drive even further nitrite formation while also triggering reactions between those nitrites and amino acids naturally present in the vegetable. That reaction may lead to the formation of nitrosamines, the same category of compounds researchers have repeatedly investigated for carcinogenic potential. One study published in the journal Foods specifically warned against leaving boiled spinach at room temperature for extended periods because of concerns surrounding this nitrate-to-nitrite conversion pathway. Similar concerns have also been discussed for other high-nitrate vegetables including celery, beetroot, kale, and carrots. Celery is particularly important here because it naturally contains very high nitrate concentrations. When it is repeatedly reheated inside soups or stews throughout the week, something many households do regularly, each heating cycle may continue pushing that nitrate-to-nitrite chemical conversion further. And once again, this connects back to nitrosamines. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified many nitrosamines as probable or known carcinogens linked to gastrointestinal cancers, including pancreatic cancer pathways studied in long-term dietary research. And this is where the irony becomes uncomfortable. The vegetable people are reheating because they believe it is helping protect their health may, under repeated reheating conditions, begin undergoing chemical changes that work against some of those benefits. So what is the safer approach? Cook leafy greens fresh whenever possible and in portions you are likely to eat immediately. If you have leftover cooked spinach, many experts suggest eating it cold the next day instead of reheating it again. Cold storage alone does not drive the nitrosamine-forming reaction the same way heat does. And if you have made it this far into the video, it probably means you genuinely care about understanding what is happening inside your body, because most people hear information like this and immediately scroll away. So if this video is already changing the way you think about your kitchen habits, take 1 second and subscribe, because the next food on this list is the one most people already suspect is dangerous, but almost nobody understands the real reason why. Food number 3, cooking oils, more specifically, reheating oils that have already been heated before. Most people already have a vague feeling that reusing cooking oil probably is not healthy. What most people do not understand is why, and how the chemistry behind repeatedly heated oils may connect to long-term cancer risk. When oils, especially polyunsaturated oils like sunflower, soybean, corn, or canola oil, are heated to high cooking temperatures, a process known as lipid peroxidation begins. In simple terms, the molecular structure of the oil starts breaking down under heat and oxygen exposure. As this breakdown happens, oxidized compounds begin forming, including aldehydes, lipid peroxides, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and in certain starchy foods, acrylamide. Many of these compounds are considered genotoxic, meaning they have the potential to damage DNA directly at the cellular level. Now here is where reheating becomes important. When oil is heated a second time, or when fried food cooked in that oil is reheated later, the oxidation process does not start over from zero. It continues from where it left off. Every additional heating cycle pushes the breakdown further. Even more concerning, the smoke point of oil, the temperature at which it begins visibly degrading, actually lowers after repeated use. That means reused oil can begin producing harmful breakdown compounds faster and at lower temperatures each time it is reheated. Studies examining repeatedly heated cooking oils have found rising concentrations of aldehydes and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons with each heating cycle. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has also classified several compounds associated with high-temperature cooking, including acrylamide and certain PAHs, as probable carcinogens. And research looking into heterocyclic amines, PAHs, and acrylamide formation consistently shows the same pattern. The higher the temperature and the longer the cooking duration, the greater the concentration of potentially harmful compounds. So every time you reheat fried chicken, fries, fried snacks, or any food that was originally cooked in oil, you are exposing that food to an additional round of heat after the oil has already undergone oxidation at least once before. But there is another detail most people never hear about. When fried food is reheated, especially in a microwave, the heating becomes uneven. Some parts of the food become extremely hot and microscopically scorched while other areas stay only warm. Those overheated spots can produce the highest concentrations of compounds like HCAs, PAHs, and acrylamide, even when you cannot visibly see burning on the surface. That microscopic scorching is enough. So the safer approach is fairly simple. Avoid reheating fried foods repeatedly whenever possible. Eat them fresh after cooking. If reheating is necessary, using an oven at moderate heat is generally safer than microwaving because the heating is more even and less aggressive. And most importantly, avoid repeatedly reusing frying oil. Now let us move to food number 4, and this one is different from the previous 3 in a very important way. The danger with reheated rice is not mainly about carcinogenic compounds forming directly through heat. The concern here is bacterial toxins, toxins that reheating may not fully destroy. When cooked rice is left sitting at room temperature, something many households do regularly after cooking large batches, a bacterium called Bacillus cereus can begin multiplying inside the rice. Its spores are able to survive the original cooking process and remain dormant until conditions become favorable. Once the rice cools down, those spores can activate and begin producing toxins. This bacterium produces two major types of toxins. One is linked to vomiting and nausea shortly after eating contaminated food. The other is associated with diarrhea and digestive irritation and often develops during storage. And this is the part most people do not realize. Reheating the rice may kill the bacteria, but it does not always destroy the toxins they already produced. Those toxins are heat stable, meaning they may survive microwave reheating and even stovetop reheating. So while the bacteria themselves are gone, the toxic compounds can still remain inside the food. In the short term, this may lead to nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, or diarrhea. But researchers are also interested in the long-term effect of repeated low-level exposure to inflammatory bacterial toxins. Why? Because chronic inflammation of the digestive tract has repeatedly been associated with higher gastrointestinal cancer risk in epidemiological research. When the intestinal lining experiences repeated irritation over years and decades, microscopic inflammatory damage can slowly accumulate. And that repeated damage may create an environment where disease becomes more likely over time. This is why proper rice storage matters so much. The safer protocol is straightforward. Cool rice quickly after cooking, ideally within 1 hour, and refrigerate it promptly. Rapid cooling helps reduce the time rice spends in the temperature range where bacterial growth accelerates. Store refrigerated rice for no longer than about 24 hours when possible. And when reheating, do it once only. Heat it thoroughly until steaming hot all the way through, not just warm in the middle. Then avoid reheating it again. If you regularly cook very large batches of rice for multiple days, it may be safer to reduce portion sizes and prepare smaller amounts more frequently. The convenience may not be worth repeated long-term exposure to bacterial toxins from improperly stored rice. Now let us bring everything together clearly, because I do not want you leaving this video with fear. I want you leaving with understanding. 4 foods, 4 different mechanisms, 1 common pattern. Reheated processed meats may increase exposure to nitrosamines and other compounds researchers have associated with pancreatic cancer risk. Reheated spinach and nitrate-rich leafy greens can undergo nitrate to nitrite chemical conversion that may contribute to nitrosamine formation under repeated heat exposure. Repeatedly reheated cooking oils and fried foods can accumulate increasing amounts of aldehydes, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and acrylamide, compounds researchers classify as genotoxic because of their ability to damage DNA over time. And with every additional heating cycle, the chemical stress compounds further. Improperly stored and reheated rice carries a different kind of concern. Not direct carcinogenic compounds from heat itself, but heat-stable bacterial toxins that may survive reheating and contribute to repeated intestinal inflammation after long-term exposure. Now take a breath for a second and understand something important. None of this means you need to completely change your diet overnight. None of this means you can never enjoy your favorite foods again. The goal here is awareness, not fear. In reality, this comes down to 4 simple habit changes. Avoid reheating processed meats at extremely high temperatures. Try eating cooked spinach and nitrate-rich leafy greens cold the next day instead of reheating them again. Avoid reusing frying oil and limit repeatedly reheated fried foods. And when it comes to rice, cool it quickly, refrigerate it within about an hour, and reheat it only once until steaming hot throughout. That is the practical takeaway. Those 4 adjustments, applied consistently over years of everyday cooking habits, may significantly reduce repeated exposure to the same categories of compounds researchers continue studying in connection with inflammation, DNA damage, and pancreatic cancer pathways. And now I want to ask you something. Out of these 4 foods, which one surprised you the most? Was it processed meat, the spinach, the cooking oils, or the rice? Because the answers people give to that question almost always reveal the biggest gaps in public health education, and honestly, those gaps are exactly why videos like this matter. So tell me in the comments below. I read them carefully and your feedback shapes the topics I cover next. And if this video changed the way you think about reheating food even slightly, consider sharing it with someone close to you. Not for the algorithm, not for views, but for the person who reheats leftover sausages every morning or keeps fried food in the fridge for days without ever thinking about what repeated heating may actually be doing chemically. Sometimes one small piece of information changes a habit for life. And if you want more evidence-based discussions about food, aging, inflammation, and long-term health risks, subscribe and stay with me. Because in the next video, we are going to talk about 5 breakfast foods commonly advertised as healthy that researchers are increasingly questioning, especially for adults over 60. One final and very important reminder before I go. Everything discussed in this video is based on published food science research, biochemistry studies, and findings from recognized international cancer research organizations. This video is educational and informational only. It is not personal medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment guidance for your specific situation. Cancer risk is complex and influenced by genetics, lifestyle, environment, overall diet, and many other factors. If you have concerns about pancreatic cancer risk, digestive health, or your nutrition habits, please speak directly with a qualified healthcare professional who understands your medical history. I'm Dr. Adrian Vale, and your health deserves the kind of information most kitchens never come with.